Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the National Guard 8633N DKB threshold is what this is. This is comprised of 4 components. Take all of that apart. And what this is a thermal break, latch track, panic, or bump up style threshold is what it is. And this is a very high performance type of threshold, and I'm going to explain what all that means in a moment. But it is typical for all those parts to be separate because it is thermal break. You literally want to break the metal at some point to completely arrest the transmission of, or the loss of energy from one side to the other. And let's start with some dimensional properties. Overall width of this threshold, about 6 inch. This is probably going to be a 1/4 inch tall in terms of the dimension where the door is going to reside. Yeah. And overall height is going to be 1/2 inch. From the bump up area to the back of the threshold, some people ask that. It's about 1 5/8 inches maybe. Okay. Which means you can determine the rest of it. Some people will ask, well, you know what? It's not measured from the backside usually, right? So from the front to where my tape measure is hitting, it's going to be about 4 3/8. To the end of the vinyl, it's going to be closer to about 4 1/4. No, the neoprene. This is not vinyl. So why would you be looking at this threshold? Why might you be considering it? Let's talk about that now. Well, very simply, you might be looking for a threshold that just is a bump up style. Okay, you want one that's the door can bump up against. You like those, they work for you, they seal very well at the bottom, and they do. You would then, assuming it's probably an outswing door, you can then add a door sweep out here and have a line of defense right out here while your door resides in this area. So you've got defense here, you've got defense here, you're in good shape. Okay. You might also want something that's really short to the floor in a bump up, and this is it, because you probably have either a sill condition that's bitten into or taken away some of your clearance dimension, which is the bottom of the door to the top of whatever you're installing something onto. That's your clearance. Your undercut is the bottom of the door to the bottom of the frame, but that doesn't take into account what's happening in the floor condition. Maybe the concrete pour has come up a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch above the bottom of the threshold of the jams. Okay, sometimes you get to a job and you've sent all the you supply a job. Let's say it's a typical strip mall. It's a little bit larger than average, and you've got 8 exterior doors and 8 interior doors. You've got 8 exterior hollow metal doors, then you've got 8 bathroom doors that are steel frames and wood doors, or steel frames and steel doors. Who cares? But it turns out that the thresholds you figured on, just 1/2 inch saddle type, the guy's like, I can't get them to fit in. Why is that? They poured the concrete too high, or whatever the case might be, which doesn't happen in that instance. Where it really happens is in parking garages and condo buildings. It's not uncommon to someone call and say, yeah, you got a door 2 inches shorter? No. What happened? They poured the concrete. You got a door that you can cut from 1 inch to 2 inch, like this. So that's why your clearance might be reduced, or, and more likely is that it was planned from the beginning, and that the architect said, yeah, we're going to have a, we're going to have a 3/8 undercut, not a typical 3/4 inch undercut. A 3/8 undercut is really nice because, you've reduced the amount of dimension from the bottom of the door to the bottom of the frame. Tightening that up. Typical is 3/4 inch. Well, maybe there's no reason to have that much room underneath the door. You're just going to have to fill it with a threshold. Why not make the door longer? So that could be another reason you'd want something that's short. Bump up, good seal. Now, the piece de resistance is the thermal break. Thermal break, whether it be thresholds or hollow metal frames, I am witness to their effectiveness. I did a job in the either the mid-90s. I don't remember just before or just after the mid-90s. and first time I'd ever sold thermal brake frames, and I do recall how expensive they were. I think back then, boy, that thermal brake frame was $200. Now it's far more than that. And I thought, wonder why they're spending all that extra money on these frames. Well, 3 months after we had delivered everything, very large building, Catholic Charities, north side of Chicago, building that would be patient care along with administrative, and supplied everything, doors, frames, all the hardware, including the locksmithing services. So, end of the job, I'm ready to have you come out and key the locks. So I get my rolling Rubbermaid cart, just like, not unlike the one that's right here, put all my tools on, and I would just cruise through the building and key all the cylinders right at the doors. Wasn't removable core, interchangeable core. That would have been nice. So I went to every door, and I finally, like at about 4 o'clock on a Friday, middle of January, it's super cold, like 17 degrees outside. And I finally got to the first of the 2 thermal brakes. I had forgotten all about those. I says, let me check this out. On the inside, you've got HVAC. You've got humidity. You've got hot air coming out of the air handling equipment, the environmental equipment. And outside, you have typical Chicago, 17 degrees, frozen down everything on the exterior to the point where you open the door and you can hear the ice cracking. So the first thing I recognized, I could tell the profile of the thermal brake frame, and I put my hand on the inside of the thermal brake, on the inside of the frame. And I said, that is remarkably warmer than I thought it would be. And then I opened up the door and I put my hand on the outside. And I said, yep, that is steel in 17-degree icy cold weather. And there was a substantial difference. And what wasn't present was any condensation at all. You've got that relatively moist air on the inside to really dry cold air on the outside. Okay, no condensation built up. Thermal brake thresholds as well, and sure enough, the inside of that threshold was equally warm. Sure, you've got the concrete, you've got the masonry construction, that's going to leak, but the weather stripping itself was remarkably room temperature. Thermal brake thresholds, frames, high R-value doors, these are all really expensive pieces of equipment, there's no doubt. But I can tell you that they're extremely effective. If I had a choice of using them or not, I would make them standard. You do have the problem of needing to secure it down on both sides because you do have loose pieces there. That's really not going to work. So be mindful of that. This design has some serrations in the back, which is really nice because what that'll help is every time the door closes, okay, what's it want to do? In an exaggerated sense, it's going to want to move that laterally. These little serrations will help keep it in place. Now, this is just obviously a 6-inch sample piece. If it was the real deal, it would have countersinks and fasteners provided. So this is the 8633. The N is for neoprene. That's the insert here. And the DKB is the dark bronze. Now, National Guard products are to me, they're notoriously dark. I've had people call me and say, you've sent me black. No, I didn't send you black. It's hard to tell that that's not black. But under a certain light, you can tell that there's a brown feature to it. Like the leading edge, it's a little bit lighter, very little bit. And maybe I'm grasping for that. Could this pass for black? I suppose it might. But this is what they call dark bronze. Okay, let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at some supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, let's talk about this 8633N. So here's what it looks like. 6 1/8, sure. It would otherwise be 6-inch, except that thermal brake key kicks it out a little bit. Features a rigid thermoplastic spline, creating a separation to prevent the transfer of outside temperature and frost through the threshold. that's for sure. Fluted top, that's always nice. In my opinion, it acts like a anti-slip mechanism. You'll note that it's not listed as handicap compliant. That's because this and this feature do not observe the rise to run, the 2-to-1 requirement for that. So it's not handicap compliant, even though the maximum height of a handicap threshold is 1/2 inch. This is not handicap compliant. There are bump up styles that I believe are. We'll take a look. Cut sheet, let's take a look at that. Not going to be a lot of new information on that cut sheet that we haven't already looked at. Just a handy, convenient way to get your hands on a cut sheet. They can do it in a mill finish as well. They do talk about the V for vinyl, N for neoprene, or thermoplastic, or thermal, whatever that is, a synthetic rubber, and then silicone. Why would you want one or the other? Silicone, in my opinion, if you want something highly flexible, thinner, and extremely well positioned as a material to handle higher temperatures. Vinyl if you're looking for cost. The only reason you would use vinyl on this is that there would be no reason you would use vinyl on this. Vinyl is the least performing of all. It will degrade with exposure to ultraviolet. It will freeze, crack, tear, rip. It may only last 2 years or maybe 10. But if you're spending all the money on a thermal break, latch, track, threshold, we'll talk about latch, track, and panic in a minute as well. You're not going to save the 80 cents and go with vinyl. Neoprene is a good all-around product. It's very good with repelling moisture, as is silicone, but a closed-cell neoprene is a good all-around item. I like silicone in the sense that it's more flexible. You can crush it down much more should that be helpful in your application. It probably necessarily isn't, but nonetheless. That's my opinion on silicone over neoprene. Now, the terms latch, track, bump up, and panic. This little feature that's here, this can act as the strike of what you would force Pullman latches and surface vertical rod exit devices to lock against. So this can be used in that sort of application, even though you'll generally see them taller. But that's what this is for. So that Pullman latch is going to go right in here. So it's called a panic or latch track threshold. Bump up is obvious why we would call it that. So what's nice about it being a latch track or a panic threshold is the fact that if you have, let's say, a big box home improvement store, you walk along the back wall of those and you'll see 2 or 3 double doors, pairs of doors going to the outside. That's because they need so much clear opening expressed in inches based on the occupancy load. There's actually a formula that says how many people multiplied by, and it's in NFPA 101, I think it's 0.02, and that's how many clear inches you need between the stops to allow egress. And that's the formula. I think it's 0.02 multiplied by the quantity of people. Look it up in NFPA 101. I've learned and forgotten that number more times than anyway. So that's a really smart way to not have to chop up this threshold to get your bottom roller strike installed, or a square strike for a bottom bolt, or a bottom latch, I should say. So that's why you would use this. You know, those northern climates would greatly benefit with a bump up style, with a thermal break style threshold like this. Now I have some photographs. There is a label, and again, this is just a 6-inch sample piece. This is obviously a cross section showing us what this looks like. Close-up view of the spline, the neoprene. A blurry vision. A little better view of what that looks like, I suppose. The leading edge of what the exterior would look like, assuming they're outswing doors. You can use these on in-swing doors. Bump-up style like this isn't uncommon. If you were to use this in an in-swing application, I would certainly recommend the inclusion of a drip cap out here. I'd probably put an automatic door bottom in here as well. Showing you those ball flutes. Little close-up view, top-down. Plan view, I suppose. And then the underside of it. Those serrations. I don't have... This sample did not come with any screws, otherwise I'd have pictures of that. But you're looking at 10 by 1.25" Phillips flathead wood screws and a complementary finish is what you'll end up seeing on that. Okay, now there is a link below this video as seen here to the manufacturer's page in our site, and when you pull that up, you'll be able to review not only a link to the manufacturer's website, but a link to their full product catalog. Other encyclopedic documents are here as well, prior versions of product catalogs, the National Guard products flood shield catalogs. For the last 5 years or so, they've made flood shields, and while we don't sell a lot of them, or many of them, we do sell them. And flood-prone areas, especially those areas below grade, those buildings that are in flood-prone areas below grade for some reason, they buy these, and they have them. Like in Miami, to a restaurant, I sold 2 or 3 of them not too very long ago, and it's because, yeah, sooner rather than later, there's going to be a hurricane that comes over, and it's going to dump 20 inches in 20 hours. And yeah, you're going to have running water. And while this is not something necessarily you would consider waterproof, it is definitely going to keep you from having a worse rather than less worse condition when it comes to flood water. There's also a link to the A117.1 ICC, Accessible and Usable Buildings and Facilities. Why have that here? Well, National Guard obviously makes thresholds. This is the governing document when it comes to all things accessible features to public buildings. Thresholds are obviously a part of that. So if you were to do a find function on your keyboard for threshold, you'll find all of the instances where that word comes up, and you will find everything important about thresholds. This is the document that everyone would refer to. Thresholds at exterior, well, I don't really like sliding. Sliding. Thresholds, if provided, shall be a maximum of ½ inch in height. Existing or altered thresholds shall be permitted to be 3/4 max in height, provided the threshold has a beveled edge on one side with a maximum slope of 1 to 2, for a height not exceeding 1/4 inch. And that inherent problem, I think, really is, while this doesn't exceed ½ inch, that exceeds 1 to 2, that angle. And obviously this does as well. So this makes it not handicap compliant. If this was like this, and maybe, I don't know how you would do this edge. We'll take a look at their catalog and see if there's a way that they skin that cat. So handy document there. Let's pull up that full line catalog. '8633. Yeah, I'm looking for something that's clearly indicated as handicap compliant, and I am not finding it. All thresholds on this page are handicap compliant. That's interesting. They also indicate that all thresholds on this page are as well. Now, frankly, I don't know how that's the case, because we can tell this is not 2 to 1. That seems to clash. So there's either this is an error, which is unlikely, or there's some sort of arrangement or allowance or consideration for this type of threshold. It could, I believe what it is that you can't exceed this 90 degree greater than 1/4 inch. I believe there's an exemption for that, is what it must be. It's only a 1/4 inch. So there you go. This catalog is obviously full of other options when it comes to thresholds, both exotic thermal brakes and otherwise. And of course, everything else that National Guard does. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. I can't tell you how many decades National Guard has been in business, but it's got to be at least 5, would be my guess. I'm into my third plus decade. They've been around ever since. Good quality outfit, there's no question. Their name is quite synonymous with gasketing. Everyone in the construction industry, commercial construction, is likely going to be familiar with National Guard. And I would certainly recommend that you review their product catalog. They do a really nice job also with accommodating custom requests. They can cut, they can weld, they can do modifications to the aluminum. So if you don't see the exact thing in their catalog that you need, an example of that would be you are doing a 16-inch jam depth hollow metal frame. This is a real opening, or maybe it was 18-inch, and you need a 20-inch wide, half-inch saddle threshold. No one's got that extrusion, but they will weld you one, guaranteed. And it will come, and it will be super wide. It'll be great. It'll be exactly what you needed. It'll be tragically expensive because labor is labor. But nonetheless, you'll get exactly what you need. So they do a great job at that. Their quoting department, their customer service department, really good. Any questions on the 8633? Neoprene or vinyl or silicone in mill or DKB or any other National Guard products, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.